Hello, everybody. Welcome wherever you are in the world. We're here for an hour, for the next hour together, and we're going to be just talking through about Remote Year and the programs that we offer and how some expert remotes who are on this call with us, how they chose their own programs, and anything that you can learn from them that might help you decide if Remote Year is for you, and if it is, where you might want to go to and how long you might want to go for. So during the call, please feel free to put any questions in the chat. My colleague Miriam is on the call. She'll be responding, and then hopefully we'll get to some of those questions at the end as well. We can ask them to some of the panelists. Now, you may all be thinking, who is this guy sat in a dungeon? My name is Daniel. I am part of the leadership team at Remote Year. I'm currently based in London. I'm a part-time nomad, so I spend half my time in London and then half of my time traveling around Remote Year programs, which is a very nice lifestyle, I must say. I've been working for Remote Year for 2.5 years. And then I have my colleague Steph on the line.
Yeah, guys, I'm Steph. I'm a community leader. So I've been with Remote Year for 6 months, but I've been on my program with my group for 5 months. So we're on month 5 of a 12-month journey. And I'm a full-time nomad. We're currently in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Spent a great weekend in Iguazu Falls. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. Before we talk a little bit about Remote Year, I just want to talk about even remote working. Like, the nature of remote working has changed so much since COVID. And there are so many more people interested in sort of working remotely than there were sort of before the COVID pandemic. But even before the pandemic, it was still a very popular pursuit. But some really interesting facts. Now that so many more people are traveling, there's so many more studies about remote working, and just in terms of like how many people are doing it and just sort of how widespread it is. So we can see here, there's one stat, by 2025, it's forecast that nearly 33 million Americans will be working remotely. So nearly a quarter of the workforce. That comes from Forbes. So that isn't something that I've just made up. So that's a pretty substantial stat. And there's something that we know from working remotely ourselves, and that we know from having sort of the nation, everybody who's worked as part of Remote Year, is just some of the benefits of working remotely. And there are now studies that back this up, just how productivity can be increased by here at least up to 1/5 by working remotely, and also just how it can help relieve stress by offering a better work-life balance. So if you're in a position where you want to work remotely and you're not sure that your employer is so keen, then there's certainly plenty of studies that we can now help you with and point you in the right direction. And in fact, something maybe with our panelists today can talk you through some of those things. So yeah, so certainly remote working is on the up and up, and we're so likely to see more people take on this lifestyle. And so how do we fit in to this Remote Year? Why is it you're here today? We've been around since 2015. When I tell people what I do, they're like, oh, is it because of COVID? It's like, no, this company's been around way before COVID. In fact, we've had over 5,000 people partake in Remote Year. It's a rather large number. And what we do is we're a global network of people. If you come on a Remote Year program, it's your opportunity to live and work remotely in one of up to 20 locations around the world, 1 month at a time. And we take care of all of the logistics. And it's not just about when you're on that program. As you say, you're part of a network of up to 5,000 people who will share this lifestyle as well. So it's not just about when you're on a program, there's a community too. And how do you work? How does it work? Well, we're going to talk about this a bit more in a moment, but we're a membership organization that gives you access to the nation. And there's 3 main ways that you can travel with us, three different program types. So you can either travel for 1 month at a time. And if you travel for 1 month at a time, it's up to you if we provide your accommodation or not. That's a new option. So no longer do we always provide automatically your accommodation. It's up to you. You can travel for 4 months at a time. That means you'll be starting with one group on day 1, and then for the next 4 months, you'll be with the same group, traveling with a different city each month with that same group. And if 4 months doesn't sound like long enough, then you can do that same for 12 months. And if you do the 4 months and the 12 months, we include your flights in between. So we take care of, I say, all of the logistics. So those are the 3 main ways that people travel with us. There's a bit of a crash chart here just to see what's included. So it's up to you now. If you're traveling for 1 month, it's up to you if we include your accommodation. If you're traveling for 4 months and 12 months, your accommodation is always included. No matter how long you're traveling with us, you're always included is your co-work space access and a multitude of experiences dotted throughout the month. And we only include connecting flights if you're traveling one of our journeys, so 4 and 12 months. And a few other differences as well, like if we don't provide your accommodation, we're not going to pick you up from the airport, but we can help you get from the airport to your own accommodation. And the most important thing to know is that no matter how you're traveling with Remote Year, you've got the full access of our team. So there's always a team on the ground to support you. And if you're traveling around on a journey, then you're going to have somebody like Steph traveling with you who are going to be embedded within your community and be with you from day 1 through to day 365 if you're on that 12-month journey. And as I said, there's up to 5,000 people who've traveled with Remote Year before. So just give you a bit of a flavor. Who are these 5,000 people? That's one of the biggest things that people always want to know. Like, who travels with you? Well, our latest count is 70 nationalities are represented within our nation. Age range, well, our youngest is 21. We have a 21 minimum age limit, but we don't have an upper age limit. So at the moment, there's somebody I think who's maybe even 77 traveling on a program with us at the moment, but there's no age cap. So we welcome everybody. 42% POC, 14% LGBTQ+, 65% female. And another thing people want to know is like, is everybody sort of entrepreneurs or working for themselves? Actually, 75% of our nation are in full-time employment. And then in terms of what employment, that is a massive array of different industries, everything from tech to marketing to creative to counseling, education, finance. I mean, there's a massive spectrum of industries that people represent. So yeah, a big community with many different aspects within it. Right, that's kind of my very quick overview of Remote Year. I'm sure many of you already knew that before. If you didn't and you need more information, it should be on our website, or we can give you some details after this of who you can speak to get some more information. As I say, this webinar is focusing on like how, if you are interested in Remote Year, but you don't know how long to travel for or where to go to, hopefully over the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, we can give you some of those answers to make things a bit easier for you. We're going to do this as a series of webinars. Today we're talking about obviously the programs and the places. Then we're going to do another webinar in a month's time when we're going to talk more about our accommodation and our experiences and everything that's included. And then a month after that, we are going to be talking more about the community in more depth. So if you're not ready to travel now and you want to know more information, we'll be sending you details about those webinars. But for today, we're going to be talking about the programs and places because that's the main thing that people want help with. So we have our team that you can call up and ask questions. And that's what most people want to know is like, I don't know which one I need to go for. Like, I want to do 4 months, but I don't know if it's going to be too much for me, or I want to go to Asia, but I don't know if the working hours, how that's going to work. So all these kind of things, that's why we've put this together to hopefully provide some of those answers. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Steph. And maybe if you'd like to introduce everybody, that would be wonderful.
Great. Okay. Welcome, guys. So I would like to introduce our 3 remotes who have traveled on various different programs. And I think you'll gain a wealth of knowledge and wealth of knowledge and expertise from them, varying different experiences. So first I'd like to introduce Chris. Chris, tell us where you are, what industry you're in, and what programs you've done on Remote Year.
Sure. So I am Chris Carter. I'm an experience designer. I am based in Maryland on the Eastern Shore, kind of close to the coast here. And I just recently got back from a month in Florianopolis, Brazil, which was incredible.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris. And Ryan, same to you.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Ryan Rosella. I'm currently in Split, Croatia on a ROI month. I'm a software engineer for a social good company, and what programs I've done quite a few actually. So I did 5 one-month programs last year. I did Medellin, Colombia, Lima, Valencia, Lisbon, Cape Town, and then I did a 4-month journey earlier this year through Latin America, and then now I'm doing 4 one-month programs again through Europe.
Amazing, thanks. And Amy.
Yeah, hi, I'm Amy DuPont. I am currently in Medellin, Colombia. I have my own company called Change is Limitless. We do interview prep, career coaching, and consulting. I am doing the 12-month journey with Baker. If any of you have heard of Baker, there's a lot of 1-monthers that keep joining us, and I'm loving it so far.
Great, thank you guys. So we're going to start off with you, Amy. What made you decide to take a big leap and do the 12-month program?
Yeah, I love this question. So, I actually had a friend that was already doing the 12-month journey. She said, "This is a very Amy thing to do. Why don't you check it out?" Never heard of remote year in my life. Did some searching and researching about what it was. I realized it was where they were putting us was super safe. There were 65% of women doing it, and I was like, well, at least I'm gonna like one or two people. And then a month later, after I started talking to the remote year team, I signed up for that. And at that time, I was like, well, whatever money it is to sign up, I'm gonna sign up, and if I want to pull back, I can pull back. That was about 6 months before I started the October program last year. So that's how I started.
Okay, and Ryan, I mean, you've done several different programs. What made you kind of jump in, do that first 1 month, and then consistently stay with us,
Yeah, for sure. So I first learned about remote year back in 2016, and back then it was only a year-long program. And post-pandemic, really want to do remote year again, and my thought was to do a 1 month program. And I picked like a location I probably was very unfamiliar with, which is Medellin, Colombia, and just gave it a first shot and really enjoyed it. And my first week on my very first program, I booked my second month and just kind of continue going.
I love that. I love that. And I find that a lot. That happens a lot where people just like jump straight in and they're like, another month. Okay, Chris, what about you?
For me, it was kind of spur of the moment. I had planned, I've been traveling kind of by myself for a while, and I'd planned to be in Colombia the week that I started in Brazil. Just got this kind of hankering. I guess I saw an ad that I wanted to travel with other people. I think the ad kind of like talked about that. So I looked into the program, saw the location. I knew I wanted to go to Brazil for a long time. So it just seemed like kind of serendipitous moment of let's try it with remote year.
Amazing. And like now looking back on it, I mean, you're a month post trip. Do you feel like that was the right decision for you? Like, do you feel like that you made the right choice in terms of destination and the length? Like,
Yeah, totally. It's kind of funny. I actually was very close to canceling because I broke my pinky like a week before we left. So didn't think it was going to be a good opportunity for me to like, go and have to sit out a bunch of stuff. But in hindsight, I'm glad I went. Didn't hurt my pinky anymore. Ended up doing a lot of stuff, meeting a lot of people. When I was actually there, I think Ryan said like within the first week, I knew that I wanted to extend. I couldn't just because of responsibilities back here. But, the experience wise, I definitely wanted to keep going with the group for sure.
okay, great. And Amy, I mean, you've done a year. Your experience is going to be completely different to Ryan and Chris. Like looking back on it, are you glad that you picked the year? Are you trying to do another program?
Yeah. So before the program, I had a lot of things that I wanted to get rid of. So I sold my house, I sold my car, I quit my job. I did a lot of transformational things beforehand, and I think it helped that I had that 6 months before the journey to really like get everything into play. I sorry, I'm in the workspace currently. So it's the joys of working remote. And so when I started the program, I really was just unsure. I had not a lot of expectations of what I was getting into. All these people that I was meeting, all 13 of us, we met in Vietnam. And that was a pretty big journey for me by myself. About 36 hours plus traveling, and I did that alone to go and meet these random people, which was amazing. And carrying on from there, I've met Chris in person, I've met Ryan in person, I've met a lot of the RY Nation in person, and it's been really cool to see the people who, like I said in the beginning, really show up again every single time that we are in a country, which is really nice.
Thank you. Ryan, I mean, you've done different programs, you've done several different programs, so you've met a lot of people along the way. For you, do you feel like doing that 1 month was the right decision? And like, are you glad that you did that? I mean, you straight away booked another another program, but like also speaking to other people you've met along the way, like what have people been saying in terms of their decisions and their experiences along the way?
Yeah, I think everyone's different. I'm very happy that I chose to do that 1 month because I got to meet, I mean, there was like 52 people that month, and I got to meet so many people who had done remote year before. And it kind of gave this sense that people are repeating doing remote year, which means that they really like doing it. So for hearing people say that, it made me want to continue and explore because there were so many different destinations. So I'm really glad I did it that way. Also really glad I did a bunch of like 1 month programs because I got to meet just a various amount of people. But I also think that it all depends on the person because a journey is much easier. 4 months does seem like a long time. 1 month is great to like try it out, see if you can do it, and then 4 months is more of a lifestyle choice. So now you're with this group of people for 4 months and you're continuing on. So there's two slightly different things but I've enjoyed both factors of it, I think.
Yeah, amazing. And then for you, because you've done both a 1 month and a journey, what are the differences? What have you felt the differences are? Because like you did multiple 1 month like trips, and now you're on that, well, you've done a journey. What was the main differences for you? Because you didn't, I know logistically you didn't have to figure out your own flights for the journey, but other than that, what did you find different?
Yeah, I think I'm a particular case because I did a lot of back-to-back remote year 1 month. So like figuring out the logistics between the cities was quite complicated. With the journey, you kind of remote year books your flights. You don't have to really worry. You just have to know where the transport is, get on your flight, get to the next destination, and then you move together with the same amount of people, the same people on the journey. So there's that part. I think the thing with the journey is that since you are with 13, 14, 20 people the same, you can kind of forge relationships over a longer period of time. Someone you might not spend a lot of time with at the beginning, and then later on you'll spend more time with, or vice versa. That was really helpful as well. I think it's harder in a 1 month because everything's so compressed that you want to kind of do everything. Where on a journey you can kind of spread it out longer, as well as like a work schedule. I think I noticed as well in a 1 month, a lot of people just, it's kind of hit or miss, like who's working and who's doing like being a nomad full time versus kind of just trying out this lifestyle. So I think everyone has to kind of find their way, and a 1 month is definitely a way to kind of get honed in. But I've also met people on my 4 month journey that they dove right into a 4 month journey, and I was like very surprised to hear that people with a 1 year also. I think it takes like a lot of courage, and it's just you're dedicated and you have to do it.
Thanks for that. Amy, I mean, doing a 1 year journey, you get to meet a lot of 1 monthers along the way. Like, how has that changed the dynamic of the experience? Because like for my group, for instance, we had 1 monthers in month one, then we didn't have 1 monthers for like, and now in BA we have 1 monthers, and it's been really interesting getting new people back into the group. Like for you, how has that been for you and the rest of the Baker?
Yeah. There's a core of us, right? And we call ourselves Baker, and there's 13 of us that are very, very, very close. And we were in a really good group that just shared initially, super vulnerable, and was able to jump in. And nobody knows you before remote year 2 as well. I want to share that just for some people that get nervous about meeting new people. Nobody knows you before this. There's no preconceived notions. You can really jump into a group and have a really good experience, and you can be whoever you want to be at that point. When I meet new 1 monthers every single month, I think it is more of like an experience that you have to, one, as a 12-monther, I have to kind of back away a little bit just because I'm 55% introverted. I'm more introverted than extroverted. And I think there's some people that need that social battery and kind of understanding, but knowing that you can along the month start to talk to people and start to know and recognize that those are the people you gravitate towards, right? So what I would say for a 12-month journey is the expectation is you want to do everything all the time and see everything and be out and do all these things, but then you burn yourself out, which has happened to me. And so from that, I think the experience and the learning that I've learned is really to know that you can't see everything, you can't do everything, and you can't meet everyone. And if you can, good, great. But I think it is setting the expectation for yourself to really know that 1 monthers are going to come in, you're going to talk to them, you're going to make friends, and then you're going to have friends everywhere in the world. I've met so many diverse people, and people that I will connect with later on as well, which is the most amazing thing that I could have ever experienced on a journey.
Thank you for that. Okay, so in terms of advice you'd give to people who are looking to join remote year, Chris, what would you say, having come off a 1 month program, like what would your advice be to someone who was looking to join remote year and do a 1 month?
I'd say my advice is, for me in hindsight, to do it. Like there was a lot of fear about, the social aspect. I too, like Amy, introverted kind of naturally. So thought it was going to be extremely exhausting to be a part of that. Also, when you're mapping out, or if you, decide to go to a destination, you have access to all these experiences before you get there. Pace yourself, because like Amy said, I tried to do everything that was scheduled, and I found that a lot of the unscheduled stuff, the more spontaneous dinner nights out or going to the beach, those are the events for me that meant the most to me. So, enter it with expectations to be busy, but definitely, don't overbook yourself. Don't burn yourself out.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with that wholeheartedly. Ryan, what about you? What advice would you give?
Yeah, I think we talk about this a lot on remote year during orientation, whereas remote year provides all these things, and it's how you fill the luggage, like how you decide to do your experience, and it's up to you to really make it. Like Chris said, like there's tons of experiences, there's tons of things to do, and balancing that with work. I think exactly what Chris said, most of my favorite times I've ever had on remote year have been these simple things like nights out. Dinner Valencia has this amazing rooftop that we've hung out many times at, watching sunsets, just these small little things that, because you're with people and you're with community, that really brings it. So it's really showing up and being part of the community.
Yeah, I agree. Amy, anything you want to add as well?
Yeah, I would say ditto to both of them, everything there. I would also say lean on your RY people if you're in a 4-month journey or a 12-month journey, or if you're a 1 monther going for just, a short amount of time. If you're having a hard time about it, 12-month people and 4-month people have sort of been through it a little bit more. Lean on the community leaders, lean on those people if you're having a hard time. I don't feel like I'm fitting in, whatever it might be, right? To make sure that you are really getting the most out of your month, and speak up initially, right? I think a lot of people wait till like the middle of the month to open up, and they're like, oh man, well now I want to go and do more things, which is great. But you can also have that experience from the beginning if you do play your cards right and make sure expectations are set.
That was amazing, guys. So we're going to move on to places and regions, and we're going to touch on that a little bit. So question to I think I'm going to go with Ryan first. Did you think a lot about the actual destination where you were going when you first signed up, when you were like, all right, this I'm going to do is 1 month? Did you have a lot of thought go into it in terms of time zones, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, for sure. I think the time zone really, because I normally work like an East Coast day, and Central America, or I guess Medellin is in like the Central time zone, depending what day, what year, or what time of the year it is, daylight time versus Standard Time. So that made it like very easy to be on the same time zone as my team. So that made it easy. When I went to Europe, I had to switch time to like the evenings to work to overlap an Eastern time day, and that was nice because all the activities are in the morning. But yeah, I did think a lot about like logistically where, what if I had to like go back to the States for some reason. But I think with Colombia, it was far enough where it makes it easy to like not kind of escape back to your normal life. If something goes wrong, you kind of want to play it out. So I did kind of push it out of my comfort zone. This is my first time in South America as well when I did it last year.
Okay, great. And Chris, what about you? Was that a consideration when you signed up?
Yeah, definitely. I work East Coast time too, so time zone was important to me. Language was important. So I went to Brazil, they speak Portuguese. I speak very little Spanish, but enough to kind of bop around. So having that little base connection for language was helpful. But the main thing was just making sure that I'm not like working at nighttime when, everyone else is working.
I get that. And speaking of working at nighttime, Amy, I know you started in Vietnam. You started in Vietnam. When you saw the itinerary, were you like, oh my God, Asia, this is gonna be crazy? Or how did you take that? How did you embrace that? How did you think about all of that?
Yeah, and like I said just like a few minutes ago, it's about setting expectations. I really knew that that was going to be a struggle. I knew that I would be working at night. I knew I would be connecting with people in the middle of the night. But I knew that remote year would have me set up with a workspace that was going to be reliable and also have Wi-Fi that could really make sure that I was connected with the people I needed to connect with overnight as well. So I was less afraid about that, but I was really just making sure my mindset was in the right place because, you know, you're working all night, you're talking to people, and then the next day you have a bunch of things to do. When do you sleep? It is kind of hard in Asia to sleep, but I think that again, that's setting expectation, making sure you know you can't do everything every day. We started in Vietnam, and Vietnam has the best coffee, so that helped a lot. They have really, really good coffee and nice coffee shops in Hanoi. But I think even getting there and making sure that I had a good solid foundation with the people around me and everybody else was working, and we were talking about how they were working and how everybody else was getting around that same bias with their companies really did help. Even though I own my own company, I was still up in the middle of the night talking to people and connecting as well. So it was not as flexible for me either because I have clients all over the world.
Chris mentioned language, and that's something he considered. Like, Ryan, did you consider language? Was that like something that you had to kind of take into account when you were making your decisions?
Yeah, so when I got to Medellin, I did not know any Spanish really, and then luckily Remote Year offered classes. So that's actually where I first started taking Spanish, and it was also the first time I realized like how important it is to speak a language in a country, and I continued to take Spanish lessons since then. So that was one of the main reasons I decided to do a LATAM journey, just to be for 4 months in Latin America and speaking Spanish in all the different countries, because it does vary from country to country, just like English varies from country to country. And it is a little tricky now because the next couple of months I'm not in any Spanish speaking countries, so it's kind of I'm kind of forgetting about it, but I have been practicing with like other people here who speak Spanish. But that was a consideration for me, just to keep learning it.
Amy, you started in Asia. I started in Asia. I know how it goes. Was language barrier something you thought about? Like anything else? Like culturally, Asia's so different from like what we're all used to on the Western side of the world. Like, other than the language, like, was there anything else that you had to think about?
Everybody talks about, you know, Asia, and you think you know until you get there. And so I knew the pleasantries because RY does a great orientation and tells you the pleasantries and what you need to know. I think it's all about what you want to embrace and how much you want to actually start to learn with the culture as well. And it's when you get there, it's not as hard as you think it is to get around. Not a ton of English, you know, or any type of other language in Vietnam. It's just very much the Vietnamese people. The culture is very, very strong. And you know that you're a tourist there, which I loved, right? I think for me, the experience in Asia was, I know that I'm a tourist and they know I'm here and they're going to help me as much as I can, vice versa. And as long as you're nice to people, I think that that always goes a really long way. Talking louder really doesn't help them understand you, just so everybody's aware. And, there is going to be a language barrier no matter where you are, but as long as you're still in the space of like learning and growing with them, and you're saying hi and you're saying please and you're saying thank you in their language, it's usually okay for you. And I've noticed that in every country. I couldn't learn possibly all 12 countries that I've been in and all 12 of the languages. It's just not possible. So going in with the expectation that you're not going to know, and that's okay, and that some people are good in the world that you can get around.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. But in terms, I mean, I just came back from Asia myself, and in terms of cost of living and culture and all those things, I'm going to stay with you, Amy.
Yeah.
What were the big differences, or the big things that kind of shocked you, or like the things that you were like surprised by that you experienced whilst you were in Asia?
I love this question. Asia brought such a beautiful perspective of community and togetherness. and the help your neighbor type mentality that really the US doesn't have. And I can only speak from the US because that's where I live. But you know, we have this like dog eat dog, everybody's independent, you know, in the US. And then in Asia, it was so amazing to see that they don't have kitchens. They go down and they eat on the street in Vietnam, and they eat together during the day, and they take the time to do that. And it gives me chills. I just got chills. It's such a beautiful thing, and the culture is so strong, right? I think that when you start to branch out and see different cultures and see everybody helping everybody else, and you know that it's Vietnam, Hanoi is such a big place that is constantly going 24/7, but people still know each other. I think that's such a beautiful thing. And sometimes in the US, you don't even know your neighbor, right? And, and so it was a really big shift and change for me to see that and know, like, I, you know, want that in my life somehow, and I don't know how yet, but I am incorporating that into my business, into my life, eventually. But yeah, Asian countries are very different. Europe is not so different, and South America not so different, but they're all very, in their own ways, building this community that you recognize and see while you're there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Like, I think I'm a Londoner. London, we're very dog dogs, we're very lone wolves out here. And it was so refreshing to go to Asia and see the community, and each country does it differently, but they do it so beautifully. And that's one thing I want to pull out, that Asia's not monolithic. Like, there's so many different cultures in each country. Ryan, you did Cape Town, right? What was that like? How was the difference in culture, in food and cost of living, all of that in comparison to where you come from?
Yeah, I loved Cape Town. It was one of my favorite cities I've been to on a remote year, just because I always thought it was one of those things that was so out of reach that it seems so far. But, you know, working there, you're on a European time zone. It just seems very far away. Culturally wise, I mean, everyone there speaks English, so that's easy. But just the culture of knowing what that country you went through and like what it means for the South Africans, it was quite an eye opener, and I had like probably one of the best months I ever had in remote year there, just learning about everything about the country.
And Chris, with being in Latin America, is there anything that kind of surprised you in the difference of the US? Like, when you were in Brazil, like, what kind of shocked you that you were like, oh, this is really different, considering it's South America still, but like it's a completely different country. Was there anything that kind of gave you any kind of shock?
Yeah, I don't know about shock being the right word, but kind of looping back to your language question, how kind people were if they didn't understand English, but even if they didn't understand my awful Spanish, like people were still really, really, really kind and really accommodating, and gestures and Google Translate. So it just kind of, I reflected a lot about how nice I want to be to people here in the States. There's a lot of tourists here, so like, it really, for me, it was like shocking of how accommodating people are to different cultures there, and language especially. It was really nice.
Yeah. That's something that's really important. I think that's true. Is there anything, and this is something I've been thinking about, is there anything that you were like, this is going to be really important, and it wasn't? I'm going to stay with you, Chris. Like, is there anything that you were like, yeah, like this is going to be an issue, and you went there and it wasn't? Or, you know, like.
Yeah. Logistically, I thought I needed to pack way more than I actually needed when I got there. Like, I didn't wear a lot of the clothes I brought. I think some places in Latin America, the money exchange is kind of weird and strange. For Brazil, for me, it was relatively simple. I was really pleasantly surprised about, you know, the cost of doing things there, which was nice. But just commerce and money and all that just wasn't as big of a deal as I thought it was going to be. It was really simple and easy.
I'm in BA, so I completely understand what you mean about the currency thing. Ryan, what about you? I mean, you've been so many different destinations. Was there, I mean, after a while, I guess your mindset starts to kind of shifts, doesn't it? But when you first started, the first few trips that you did, was there anything that you thought, this is gonna be really important, or this is something that I'm really nervous about, and then it ended up not being a thing at all?
Yeah, I will jump in though. I was in Buenos Aires in March also, so the blue rate thing was a little tricky, and so learning about that was quite interesting. And I think it's still like it's going crazy there right now. But yeah, I think there's always this mind shift that like you always see in these remote year slides where it's like you think of a place, this destination, and then what it actually is, and when you get there, you experience that. And I think it's like being open to these experiences and knowing that I think in the United States we like rush to do everything, and a lot of places you have to get used to things that are slower because we're rushing. That we need to like get into the mindset that you don't need a rush. Like you can have this cup of coffee here, you don't need to take it away.
Amy, for you, I mean, a 1-year journey, the mindset is very different. What did you do at the beginning? I know I did some crazy things. I've got some things in my suitcase that I've not used. Is there anything that you kind of had in your mind that this is going to be like this? I'm going to Asia first, and it's going to be like, so I'm going to Europe first, so I'm going to Cape Town first, and not first, but are there any things that you thought were going to be a certain way and then completely like just weren't that?
Packing. I think I saw a question in the chat with packing. Packing is you're never going to pack correctly for remote year. You're just not. And it's okay. I've lived with 2 suitcases this entire time and a backpack, and I've been completely fine the entire time. You can always go and buy different clothing and things like that. Even Vietnam, you can actually get tailor-made clothes. And to go back to your question about pricing, it's pretty cheap compared to the US, very cheap compared to the US. So doing those types of things, and knowing that there are different things. And medication was also a thing for me. Like I overpacked on paracetamol and all of these things, and you realize that there's stores at other places and you don't need to have that much stuff with you at all times. The one thing I did pack that a friend recommended that's on the trip was actually like a filtering system for water. That's like a water bottle. And that actually came in a lot of handy whenever I was in different countries that we couldn't drink the water, and I didn't have to go buy water all the time. And it filtered out like the viruses and different things. It's for hiking. But I did pack very much like we were going to be camping and hiking every single day, which was a no-no. We really just hang out, and have a good time. And there is hikes. There's a lot of different things you can do, and a pair of hiking boots would be great. But I didn't need all of the extreme hiking things that I've had. So I've changed my wardrobe over to like active, functional, and a little bit cute, but it was initially I was packing like I was going on like a camping trip for some reason. I also bought an excessive amount of safety items, like things to make sure my door was locked, and like that thing that goes off if someone tries to come in. And remote year puts you in such safe and nice places, you don't really need those things. But I did have a lot of concern about safety beforehand. It's my number one value there.
What were your top 3 things that you actually took with you that you feel like were really valuable for the destinations you went to, and just in terms of just becoming a digital nomad? I have a couple that I think are really good ones, but what do you guys think? And I'm going to start with Ryan.
Yeah, I think portable charger. Like you do not want to be like stuck out somewhere with your phone, especially in Lisbon, because that's the way you unlock your door. And then you can't get a hold of your roommate. I think number 2 is like a packable towel. You'd be surprised how many times you need a packable towel somewhere. And then I think the third one would be what Amy said, like a filtered water bottle. I have a very similar like LifeStraw one that I carry with me as well.
I'm gonna ditto everything that Ryan said. The other thing was a pair of hiking boots, which I think really came in handy because a lot of people had to go buy them when we were going to do hikes or whatever that might be. The water bottle, and then I would say a rain jacket. I didn't know how much I needed a rain jacket that was just like very packable in different places that we were at, that it saved me so many times, and it was something that a lot of people don't think about. So yeah, rain jacket for sure.
Was there anything you experienced in terms of like dietary requirements or anything like that, any dietary restrictions, and just like general advice to people who are thinking about doing this? And what would you say? Like, what's your kind of like closing statement?
Sure.
Yeah.
No dietary restrictions. I am one of those weirdos that cilantro tastes like soap. So anytime I'm bopping around Latin America, sometimes that's relevant, sometimes it isn't. Luckily in Brazil, it wasn't super relevant. So, you know, I could not have to send anything back or anything like that. As far as advice, it's easy to get stuck in decision paralysis with this because it's a bigger deal from the outside looking in than it actually is when you get there. But my advice, you know, would be just to do it, just to try it out. One of the best decisions I've made, I think I made some, you know, long-term friends, long-term business connections, you know, definitely changed my outlook on life here and abroad for sure. But I would just kind of lean into the fear a little bit and give it a try.
Yeah, there's a saying my mum used to say, and I think it's a saying, but feel the fear and do it anyway. And I definitely had that. Ryan, what about you? Did you have any dietary issues or anything like that on your journeys? And then what would be your closing statement to someone who was thinking about doing remote year?
Yeah, I didn't have any dietary restrictions, but I did have a lot of friends who are gluten-free. So depending where you were at, like in Buenos Aires, they're really good about sin gluten or, you know, no tech. And like they understood it. They were very well there. But in other countries, they just stare at you a blank stare when you kind of have to explain like what's the problem. For me, I didn't have any issues dietary wise. And as far as like, yeah, you just kind of have to do it. I mean, I waited so long to finally do it to join remote year, and I was like, what did I wait so long for? And now I've basically been living on remote year for month 10 now, so for a while. So yeah, you just have to do it and dive in. And yeah, like Chris said, I've met so many great people, and I've met so many amazing people in a remote year and traveled with a bunch of them over this past year. So it's been amazing.
Amy, what about you?
And no dietary restrictions, but Corey Lynn on our group is gluten-free. So I am very much like the Gestapo for her. I'm like, you can't have that, don't eat that. But yeah, we did find alternatives every country we're in, and she's still alive and still kicking. So she has had all of her food and what she's needed. I think what to think about in the dietary side when you go to Asia, and not so much Europe or South America, but when you're in Asia, you're eating soup for breakfast. You're not eating your typical like Westerner breakfast or anything like that. You're eating soup, you're eating what they have as their requirements, right? I ate a lot of pork there, and there are alternatives, right, for people who don't eat pork or don't eat beef. And there's tofu and there's chicken. They don't make a lot of chicken in Vietnam, but there's other things that you can try. And I would say dive into the cuisine. That was like fun for me. I ate goat for the first time, which was crazy to me. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And there's a lot of vegetarian options too. There's another girl on our journey that has vegetarian preferences, and every single time we went somewhere, they made sure they had enough food for those people and fed them correctly. So I think dive into the cuisine and just make sure that you are really paying attention to what the locals are doing, because it's honestly the best food. Closing, I would say just jump off the cliff is really what it is. I had to, and a lot of people call me brave, which was, and you'll find that if you know you do a 1 month or a 4 month or a 12 month, everybody says, you know, how brave you are. And I couldn't take that for a long time. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I'm just doing this. This is what I've been wanting to do. And I think embracing that now and knowing that this is such a huge opportunity for me, and that RY has enabled me to do and meet these people and really explore the world, jumping in and doing it and making sure that, you know, you have everything with you, you're aware, but you know that there's going to be ebbs and flows and changes in your life, and that's just life in general, right? And so when you're on the journey or 1 month or whatever, just know that like you got you, and then there's RY and there's other people around you that'll help you as well.
Thank you guys so much for sharing your wisdom, your experiences, your knowledge. It's been amazing talking to you. And I'm going to pass back over to Daniel.
Thank you, Steph. And again, Ryan, Amy, Chris, massive thanks. And actually, I can't let you go just yet, because there are a few questions that have been posed in the chat box as we've been talking, and I think you can help with some of these. Actually, Chris, I'm going to go to you first. You said that you chose to go to Brazil because you spoke a little bit of Portuguese. And there's one question, it's like, with being away on remote year, did it help you improve your foreign languages? So did your Portuguese improve from being in Florianópolis for that 1 month?
Yeah, so I don't speak any Portuguese. I speak a little bit of Spanish. That I think did improve, just because I needed to lean on it a lot more. And I did learn quite a bit of like conversational niceties in Portuguese, which is good.
Thank you, Chris. And Ryan, I think similar to you, you're saying that you're getting Spanish lessons. So presumably living the lifestyle throughout LATAM, I'm hoping your Spanish has improved.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I continue to take Spanish lessons in each of the cities, and yeah, my Spanish is greatly improved. Like I think I'm like intermediate one now, which is I used to not even be able to order on the menu. So now I used to be scared like to walk into in Mexico City. There's like the Walmart, and I'd be please get the automatic cashier, just so I don't have to talk to anybody. But now it's like I have like no problem. Like every now and then you hit a roadblock or lost in translation moments, but yeah, I don't have like any fear of speaking Spanish anymore.
Amy, I've got a different question for you. Somebody's asking about their age groups and just at different ages, and having traveled around for a year or nearly a year now with us. Somebody was just asking, feeling they were slightly older, sort of 50 plus,
Yep.
and would you have any advice for somebody who's in that age bracket?
I love this question, and yes, and I did see it in the chat and wanted to address it, so I'm glad you asked me. We do have some people on our group specifically that are in the 50 plus age range, and I think for me it is a why not. If I didn't find remote year, I'd probably be doing this later on in life as well. But I would say like why not do it, and there's nothing specific for an older age group, but intermingling, and like I was talking about before, the community and everybody together. There's people from 24 to almost 60 that I've met, or older than 60 honestly, on my journey, and so we've gotten along fine and everything has been amazing, and sharing intergenerational stories and making sure that everybody feels comfortable, but also throwing up the boundaries and the barrier of like, hey, this is how I see something, and listening to that person's perspective, right? So we as people just need to be better going into being in a intergenerational really like trip with someone, because if you are unbiased towards something, it's really not going to help you in those situations. But I would say why not? No matter what age you're at, do it, right? Like you're going to learn something no matter what age somebody is. I don't think time is relevant, so that's that's a no-brainer for me, but for other people I know it matters to them. But it's catered to whatever you want to do and however you want to do it, depending on what age you are, and they make sure that the marketplace is up to date, and they say, hey, just in case you don't want to do this, there's some things that could be a struggle for someone who has, maybe I have a broken back, so that could relate to some other people as well, and I can't do those types of things. So if you don't feel comfortable walking that much or whatever it might be, the group is always there to surround you, and there's people picking you up no matter what, at any point of the journey, whether that's physical or mental.
Thank you, Amy. I really appreciate that. There's one more question actually I'm going to answer. It's a question coming in about regular prescriptions, and I think that's something I might just talk about. That is something you do need to think about when you're considering which regions you go to, depending on what prescriptions that you regularly take. You will need to do your research to find out whether you're able to get those prescriptions within those countries. And there's certain countries where certain prescriptions are actually illegal. And so it does involve doing a bit of homework, because you need to make sure obviously that you're able to carry on taking your medication. But we can help you with that in that process. So there's the thing we have called International SOS, which is an international global network of health resources, and any kind of questions related to what medications are legal in different countries, we pose those questions to them, who are the experts, so we can find you those answers, so there are no nasty surprises. Thank you so much again to Chris, Amy and Ryan for joining us here today. Again, like a huge thank you from me and Steph and Miriam, who's also been dealing with the chat in the background. Huge thanks to you. But from all of us at RY, thank you very much. If you want to know what we've got available, please go on our website, www.remoteyear.com, and you can see a list of all our programs. And if you've got any questions, you can just email us at hello@remoteyear.com. So on that moment, it is exactly on the hour. Huge thanks to everybody for taking part and for attending. And hopefully we shall see you all on the road very soon. Thank you.